Once a consumer has made up their mind on what your brand stands for, it's very hard to change that mindset. One thing that COVID taught us was that people crave people crave experiences.
So I'm sat here with John from Smeg. John, thank you for coming on to the podcast.
Thank you very much. I'm really excited to join in today.
To give a bit of background on you,
Yeah.
you started as an intern at Accord,
Yeah,
and then you went on to Enterprise PLC?
that's right, yeah. So working in a very different sector to my current job, but really different, involved in construction and maintenance and public realm projects, but didn't really get the B2C consumer marketing exposure that I do in this job.
Right.
So it's very, very different.
Is that why you switched over to Smeg?
Yes.
Which is where you
Yeah,
are now?
yeah.
We've got this game in front of us. The podcast is called The Marketing Game.
Yeah.
So we're going to play a game. And what's going to happen is I'm going to go first. I'm going to ask you a question. You get your go. And we're going to go through, and each time I put a coin in, or a chip, whatever they're called.
Sounds good.
If I beat you,
Yeah.
you need to tell me what your greatest marketing disaster was.
Yeah.
And what you did to overcome it. And
I can always tell you that anyway.
and if you beat me, you get to ask me a question, and I've just got to answer honestly. And,
Fine.
We'll see.
No worries.
We'll see who wins.
Yeah.
So, first question, I'm going to go here in the centre, is what do you do exactly?
My role is very varied. I do lots of different brand-related marketing, full marketing mix really. So we get involved in website, in social media, in exhibitions and events, in PR, right the way through to sort of trade marketing, product launches, brand collaborations. So it's really varied and mixed. Every day is different.
And so that's a mix of B2B and B2C?
B2B with some of our trade customers. A lot of my role is spent sort of mixing between the two really. Yeah. B2B supporting a retailer, but the retailer is also ultimately driving through to the consumer. So it's full end to end. And in addition to that, of course, Smeg has its own store in London, which is very much B2C and an e-commerce presence. So I get involved across the mix, online and offline.
Brand building, is that as much of what you do as direct marketing?
Brand is the bit I love. I started off as brand manager at Smeg and I'm now head of marketing, but yeah, brand is what I love. Sometimes that becomes frustrating because it's hard to measure, and other times it's really rewarding because you get to do some amazing things and you ultimately can build the brand to a higher level than you can just by tactical advertising. So getting people to think of you very differently through the various different engagement we have is really rewarding.
How do you see the differentiation between a sort of brand activity and marketing activity?
I think ultimately the two go hand in hand. Brand marketing is a wider piece of the puzzle, and when you look at the statistics, if you just do tactical stuff on its own, as soon as you switch that off, your sales diminish to almost zero. If you do branding activity in conjunction with tactical stuff, then it tends to propel at a different rate and level. Versus if you just do brand on its own, clearly you're not going to capitalise enough on doing the other stuff too. So if you're promoting the brand and then you've got a nice trade offer and the trade offer then presents itself in store, somebody's heard of your brand, they're looking for a product, they see an incentive to buy, they then look you up on social media, look through your channels, see what you're about. I believe in your brand. I like your brand. I'll see you in the showroom. I'll come and visit a retailer. It's all good. So you can't just look at just one channel in isolation. People will look you up. They'll visit you. They'll find out more. They'll want to align themselves and buy into what you're selling.
Right, and I guess working with a brand like Smeg, I mean, the brand is so strong. That's a huge advantage.
Yeah, it opens up doors, it creates opportunities, it helps when you product launch, because people will know you for a product that you've made before. You're not starting from the beginning. However, that said, there are lots of parts of our range that people wouldn't naturally associate us with. And in those instances, it becomes a very, very big challenge. Once a consumer has made up their mind on what your brand stands for, it's very hard to change that mindset. So some people might associate Smeg with a retro fridge. Yeah. And that retro fridge is a design icon. It's been around for several years now. And people buy into that love of that particular product. It's how it makes them feel. However, if we launch a brand new oven with some great new technology, it doesn't resonate in the same way as the colourful retro fridge. So a lot of the work that we're working on now is how we can do that. And there's all sorts of brands in all sorts of sectors that have this same challenge. They have halo products, and those halo products are the ones that resonate with the consumer. It opens up the door, and then it's the brand's job to get the consumer to shop within that and explore the range further.
You haven't taken your go yet, so if you want to have another go, and then I've got another
I'm definitely going to try and block you, but it's pretty easy at this stage, so I'm going to go in the natural place.
You're going to go in the natural place. All right, well, I'm going to go here.
That's definitely going to try and trick me there. But
we'll see.
Hopefully
You've got
it's not a
small
trick
kids,
question.
and so do I, so I don't know how much experience you've got. What is it about your role that other marketers might find surprising that you have to do? I
think people expect our marketing department to be huge. They expect our budgets to be massive. We're a big brand. We're a medium-sized company, but we're a big brand. We punch above our weight, and people expect the resources, the people, and everything to follow. I get involved in absolutely everything. Clearing up at shows and events, setting up photo shoots, dealing with deliveries, and that hands-on approach for me is important because I get to see different parts of the business. I get to be involved in things that I wouldn't necessarily, and I feel like it's my job to also set example as well. So yes, I've got a team of 6 these days, which is great, but ultimately I wouldn't want to ask them to do things that I'm not prepared to do myself. So that's, I think, the thing that people would be surprised about most walking into my job, that it is very hands-on. Maybe that's how I've made it, but I wouldn't have it any other way because it allows me to have a good solid view over the whole department, and working with everyone within the team to fulfill our expectations, really.
That's your go.
Right then, so I've got to stop you here, haven't I? So clearly we go into that position there. We've got to connect 4, haven't we?
We've got to connect 4, and so I'm gonna drop one here and ask you the next question, which is, what do you think the biggest threat to marketers is right now?
I think cut through is a real threat because in many ways there are so many media channels out there these days that can proliferate a brand in whole sorts of different ways. There's digital, there's traditional, there's shopper marketing. There's someone phoned me the other day and said, we offer a service to avoid cut through for busy people working in offices. May
I just stop you, for those who might not understand, what is cut through?
Cut through being achieving some sort of standout, some sort of memory hook, some sort of point of difference. Cut through would be if you're sat on a tube and you see lots of adverts, which one are you going to look at? How are you going to be attracted to that? Or are you just blasé by the whole fact that there's tons of advertising around you? So this particular company approached me and said, we can get rid of that noise. And the only place in a lot of people's working days where they don't have as much marketing bombardment is in their working day. So why don't we send some marketing activity to that person at their desk while they're working, and put your brand on a recycled water bottle, and hit the people within our database that you want to hit. What a quite novel idea around. You could do all the traditional stuff in the world. You could be on a London bus, you could be on an underground tube stop, you could have promotional staff giving out leaflets, you could be doing all sorts of fun, cool things with influencers, recommending your venue or brand. But ultimately, where people have less noise is a good place to start with marketing sometimes. And often what we found is we've got to try and find out where people hang out. What are their interests? How do we get to reach them in the place where they're most relaxed? At university, I studied business and marketing, and one of the modules that I enjoyed the most was around buyer behaviour. And one of the things that I studied was the buyer behaviour in an airport. Now, people in an airport, often it's business travel, often it's holidays. And one of the things that happens is once you've got through check-in, once you've got through security, you're in a position of waiting for your flight. You're looking to spend money and time. You probably get some nice food. You look at the airport boutiques and shops. Your brain is in a different place. Your brain wants to treat itself. It's got time on its hands. You're probably slightly more affluent to be able to afford some of those products, given the fact that you're going on a nice holiday or you're going on a nice business trip or something. And the feel-good factor of being in that space and the need to buy something because you see other people, you're a captive audience, but the buy behaviour is really strong. So you're capturing people in the moment, and that's also a real challenge. So in a marketing world where in an everyday environment, you're exposed to all of this stuff, including your phone, including your computer, including every time you walk out of your house, bus stops and everything else, you're being sold to in different ways. Clearing through some of that clutter and gaining the cut through that we just talked about is important.
Is important. Okay, so you'll go.
Let's go. So I need to try and build upon and stop you.
I'm going to drop one here. And the next question is, so you said the biggest threat is cut through. What is Smeg doing about it? What are you doing about that problem?
We try everything in our power, really. So we look at our Instagram channel, we look at our Pinterest, we look at our LinkedIn if we're going to a sort of trade audience. One of the big things that we're trying to do at the moment is actually invest in how we segment our audience, how we go out to different people with different messages. Historically, for instance, an email campaign that we sent to our social media or database would be quite a broad brush message around products, newsletter, recipe, competition, that sort of thing. But if we know that the person is engaging with us with a particular product or colour or type of category, then we can give them more of that and it won't piss them off as much. So we've invested in a tool called HubSpot, which is quite powerful, that will allow us to bring all of our digital communications together and help us measure a bit more what we're doing in the future. So how am I going to beat you then?
I'm going to go right up there. Is AI a threat or an opportunity?
I think AI has its benefits. It also has its weaknesses. In some ways, it can be too easy for somebody to create a piece of content, be it text, a piece of copy. You've got to use your brain. You've got to use other different implements. Our designers started to use AI within images. So if we need to get a quick image together for a particular product, and we don't have the budget for a lifestyle shoot, then we could use AI to start to generate that image. It would get some of the way there, and then we would then take that into Photoshop or a similar tool to allow us to finish that image off to the way that we would want to. So there are definitely powers to AI in the chatbots, on the customer service side and things like that. So we'll definitely look at embracing that. AI, I'm sure, will also play its part within our appliances in the future in terms of how people interact with them, gesture with them, and engage with them in terms of recipes, cooking, what have you. So there'll be different elements to how AI affects in the home from a smart home point of view within users, and also from a company point of view in terms of how we can use it to leverage marketing. So.
Okay, so you're quite positive on AI?
I think so, yeah. I think you have to be open-minded and embrace different technologies. And I think, like, if you spoke to my wife, who's a teacher, she hates AI because AI will allow one of her students to write a complete essay without having to think, and it won't prove that they have any knowledge at all in the area that she's taught them. But I think from a business point of view, harnessed in the right way, it can be powerful in combination with other things. In isolation on its own, it's never going to work. But in conjunction with human skill and interpretation and evolvement, I think it will do nicely.
I think that if you have a role that could be fully automated by AI, then you just need to upskill. I know that a lot of people are worried about its effects, but I think that we'll find a balance.
Yeah, in every walk of life there'll be balance. That technology has come on in the last 10 years, I remember when I started in marketing, there was no Facebook, there was no Instagram, social media wasn't a thing, digital marketing wasn't really a thing. We messaged each other on MSN and stuff like that. But ultimately, the tools that we have at our disposal in the last 10 years of marketing, we hadn't previously. Marketing has changed and digital has become a bigger part of a lot of people's marketing mix. But I think one thing that COVID taught us was that people crave experiences, and just solely having a digital only type of being isn't the answer. The whole exhibition industry was scared that it would be hugely affected by people not coming back into those worlds. But people want to have trade relationships. They want to go and explore new products. They want a day out. Where you look at meetings, meeting somebody over Teams is great. It saves you doing a long distance travel to somebody's office. But does it replace meeting someone face to face and having a good chat and having a creative brainstorm and shaking their hand and coming up with an agreement? I don't think it does. But it goes some way to doing that, and you can, as with all of these things, they're tools that can be part of your armoury, really, and that's how I would consider them.
Yeah, I agree with you, and I do agree about being in the room. There's nothing that can replace that.
Yeah. Shall I go next?
Yeah, you go.
So, what are we going to do? You're not close to 4 just yet, my friend.
Not quite yet, no. And I thought I was ahead of you, but I think it's pretty evenly matched right now. I'm trying to figure out where I can go next without you blocking me.
This is obviously where Gillen's regretting not doing poker.
I'm better at poker than Connect 4. Yeah, you can go now if you want.
Go there.
Yeah.
Right, okay.
So what advice would you give to other marketers?
Ultimately, you've got to love what you do. If you don't love the job that you're in and the brand that you represent or the organisation that you represent, marketing's suddenly quite hard. For me, I get passionate about what I do. I get passionate about the brand that I work for, and that means that you're motivated to reinvent. I've been with the company now for 13 years, but I don't feel bored. I don't feel stale or stagnant. There's challenges, there's new technologies, there's new products, and every day is different. So for me, it's about being honest and looking at what gets you out of bed in the morning and being excited about progressing that every day.
Okay, right.
Me next?
Yeah, you next.
Right, so we've got...
Oh, I've given it away. I didn't even realise it.
Connect 4.
I was so focused on my next... You beat me fair and square, and that kind of brings us round to... Well, I was going to ask you the difficult question, but you get...
The difficult question.
Yeah, which is, what was your greatest marketing disaster? But because you've won the game, you get to ask me a question. And I don't know what this is, so this is the first time I've heard it.
I guess the biggest question from me to you, Gillen, is... Ultimately, you're an expert in creating content. What was your biggest blooper?
My biggest blooper? Ooh, let me think on that.
Did you forget to record the camera and get to the end of the shoot and not have any footage?
That has happened. I think that might be it.
Could that be your nightmare?
Yeah. So there was one. It was fairly early on, and it's that nightmare of when you get back and either the file was corrupt, it didn't record. There was a file name, but no file. And in that case, you just got to throw your hands up and say, look, I failed on this. And then it was for a podcast client. So fortunately, they were flexible and I could just go back and we re-recorded. And it's difficult when you do that, but I think that, in that kind of situation, you just got to be honest.
At the end of the day, you're only a human, and what I encourage my team, let's make mistakes, because if you make mistakes, you'll get things better and take risks. And I want people to experiment, because I think there's an element that sometimes in marketing you can play safe, you can just do what you do from within, but trying to stretch those boundaries where we can. Can we try and do a TV ad campaign? Can we try and make better that digital thing? It's important. So trial and error, and when you've made a mistake, I've made plenty in my marketing career. There's a lot. The difficult question that you'd have asked me is, happens a lot in the terms of you make a wrong call on something, a judgment error, it comes to bite you for whatever reason, and then hold your hands up, made a mistake, but you do it for the right reasons, and that's always important.
And how did you overcome that marketing disaster of yours?
In that instance, I laughed it off. It was a K brand that we were working with. It was around the time of Wimbledon, and the association with our brand and the personality that we branded wasn't correct, but we didn't know it was correct until it was live. The rebound was publicity on Twitter at the time. We don't have a Twitter account now, but at the time. And ultimately, people sniggered and stuff, but they say no such thing as bad publicity. At the end of the day, the target audience that we were going after would have appreciated our efforts and would have noticed our brand. So all good, really. I
think the stakes can be fairly low, or generally are fairly low, with marketing, and with some exceptions. I think with what happened with Bud Light recently, with the way that they redirected the brand and their marketing messaging, didn't go well for them. But I think generally, I do agree with you that you got to make mistakes and be prepared to take the risks.
You do. We certainly don't want to be like the post office and end up in a position whereby apologising for repeated failures and cover-ups and things like that is, at the end of the day, if we do make an honest mistake as a small family-run business, then we rectify it and move on. Ultimately, we're making lots of decisions to enhance and develop the business. Occasionally, one's not going to go off, but as I said, that's the encouragement of taking risks, making trial and error, not unfounded risk, but just I'm going to try and push the boundaries a little bit, and that's important.
Yeah. Well, John, great game.
Thank you very much. I'm glad I won.
Yeah, and thanks for taking the time. I really appreciate it. And thank you for watching the podcast. Don't forget to subscribe and share if you enjoyed it. I'd really appreciate it if you do that. And looking forward to dropping even more episodes to you about marketing and the marketing game.